Next question. Ready yet? Mm-hmm. You're a very, very high maintenance guest. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. Today I have a very special guest with me. We're gonna be doing something a little bit different for my channel. Jeff and I always have the most incredible candid conversations off camera. And every single time we have them, I'm always thinking in my head, I wish I had this on film, because we just have really good conversations, mostly revolving around my all-in process. I just wanted to have one of these conversations and actually record it so you guys can get a little bit of an inside scoop with how both of us interact as a couple while I'm all in and what he really thinks of me being all in. I have some questions here for him, but he doesn't know what I'm gonna ask him. I wrote them and I was gonna send them to him, but I decided not to, so he does not know what questions I have for him, so it's gonna be fun.
Let's see what you got.
Let's get started. The first question I have for you, what was your initial reaction to when I first told you I was going all in?
I was a bit surprised because we had been talking about it for a while, you documenting it on your channel, intentionally gaining weight. But I think for you and me too, there was always that uncertainty in terms of how your audience would respond to it. You had kind of built your niche in fitness. I was definitely surprised, but very happy to hear it because I do think it was what you needed at the time. And obviously now we know it is, so yeah, that was my reaction, I guess. Surprised, but hopeful and happy.
Okay, question number 2. When I started, did you think that my protocol was actually going to fix my extreme hunger?
Mm-hmm. I really did, definitely, yeah. You'll remember before we talked about all in and before you called it that, I thought gaining weight would be a good idea for you and your hunger. And that's just based on my past experience with clients, after a competition. Once the weight is regained, the hunger signals tend to settle
But I
back
tried
down.
bulking. He's the one who convinced me to do my lean bulk the first time I did it, and it didn't work. So I was a little skeptical.
I just thought that if you really honestly honored your hunger signals and didn't put any restrictions on the food that you would eat, that it would work. I never really had any doubt that you would gain the weight, eventually settle, and eventually restore your hunger patterns. I guess because I've never really known anyone with your food capacity, I kind of always thought that you might be able to eat a lot. You could probably still eat a lot, but it's just that you wouldn't have that same food focus, insatiable hunger, and the other issues you've talked about. So
you were more optimistic than I was, because I wasn't even sure.
Yeah. Okay, what else you got?
All right. So far they've been easy. Yeah, easy questions, easy questions. Okay, I wanted to start slow. So my next question is, on my channel, I've only briefly mentioned that you went through extreme hunger yourself, but I'd love for you to share your experience with your version of going all in.
I guess similar to you, my experience with all in, even though I didn't call it that, came as a result of competing in bodybuilding. The first couple of times I did it would have been after my first 2 shows, which was 10 years ago now. And the way I thought about it back then was after your show, you want to eat as much as you possibly can because you're gonna put on so much muscle, and it was that bulking mentality, right? Then for my 3rd show, this was 2012, I got introduced to the science-based sphere and that approach to contest prep. And so at the time, what most people were doing was strict reverse dieting. So we were told it would rescue your metabolism better and you wouldn't undo all your hard work if you slowly and methodically increased calories after the competition. So you'd add 10, 15 grams of carbs a week, and you'd still be tracking very methodically. And it was when I was doing that approach that I actually found my hunger to be the worst. That was by far the most I battled with extreme hunger and also uncontrollable binge eating, because I was always trying to pull myself back. So it was at that time that I guess was the first time I really went all in, but it wasn't a psychological all-in approach. I just so happened to always miss my macros every single day, and I would just always go over on them. But it was also, there was also such a strong feeling of guilt because I wasn't honoring my hunger. I just could not help myself. There was just an override mechanism that just wouldn't let me hit the reverse diet macros. I became critical of the strict reverse dieting approach really early because I noticed the success rate with it was so low. And so since then, I started to take more of an acceptance-based approach after competitions, where I would just accept a certain amount of fat gain, see that as a necessary process toward recovery of my training, building my muscle back, and just accept it for what it is. And then that allowed me to reach that homeostasis so much faster and get to a settling point where I felt more comfortable faster.
So you would let yourself kind of go all in your first couple of shows. It worked really well for you because psychologically it was what you were supposed to do. And then after maybe your third show, when reverse dieting was more of the popularized protocol, you tried to do it. It basically teased your hunger and your body more or less took over because you couldn't control your hunger because it made it worse in a way.
Yeah.
So then from there you started taking a different approach where you would have like this acceptable weight gain and just allow yourself to gain that weight. How much weight would that be?
When I'd compete, I'd get down to about 150 pounds at like 5% body fat. And then the peak I'd get up to would be like 185, so like 35 pounds. And I would gain that back however fast I gained it back. So it was usually within the first month after a competition. Interestingly, like when I was doing the reverse dieting approach, I was like always trying to undo any amount of weight gain. So if I'd have a really bad binge one night, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna drop my calories down to like 2,000 for the next 2 days and really try to pull it back. And it just made that recovery process so much longer than it needed to be. And I still ended up in the same place.
Yeah.
Right?
Just took longer.
Yeah, so it was usually like 30 to 35 pounds. I would overshoot my natural set point a little bit where I would naturally be comfortable, and then it would probably come back down by like 10 or 15 pounds just sort of naturally.
So, okay, after you would gain this weight, what would happen with your appetite? Like this, it's more or less like you went all in, so you would hang out maybe at a higher body weight, and then it would kind of naturally settle back down because you weren't nearly as hungry anymore. Like you said, you might forget to eat because your appetite just wasn't there anymore. So do you feel like every time you took that approach, it just worked for you? It just worked for your hunger and like you could just eat normally again?
Yeah, pretty much. And like how long it would take would depend on my mentality. The more accepting I was of the fact that gaining fat was necessary, the faster that process would be.
Yeah.
My hunger was always really ravenous leading up to the competition as I get leaner. And then after the competition, it would be really, really high. And then it would only go back down once I had kind of overshot my set point and then started to settle back in. And then it just got to its normal levels like you would know that I'm at now. Another thing is that I haven't competed since 2015, and in that time, I've kind of gotten more acquainted with like an intuitive eating approach. So now my hunger signals, I think, are so much more fine-tuned. Like before, I would try to suppress them. I would try to mitigate them with like eating all these high volume foods or like really dry foods. Like I would just buy loaves of white bread and just eat the whole loaf of white bread for my carb sources for that day. So I'd feel full, and I would like squash it really thin so I could take like small bites out of it. And all of these strategies that just were making matters worse over the long term, right? Once I had gained that weight and my body had started to settle, my hunger levels naturally went back down.
How long do you think that took you?
So the worst time, it might have been in my memory, like closer to a year, like on a 6 month to a year time frame. That was 2012. So when I tried to reverse diet, it was a long recovery. And my eating issues, like my eating behaviors, were by far the worst.
Do you think that you had like binge eating?
Yeah, I definitely did. Like I never got it formally diagnosed. I never went to anyone about it. And at the time, I don't know if I knew it was a thing, because it was common in bodybuilding circles for people to eat as much as they could, and it was kind of accepted. But now in the science-based sphere, that was being looked at as a bad thing. So I did see it as disorderly. Like I definitely negatively judged myself for doing it. I would binge probably 4 or 5 nights a week, usually at nighttime, but not always. I would feel like I completely lost control. So like, it's hard to describe, but like you would be sat down, like looking at my fitness pal, okay, I've got like 1,000 calories left for the day, I'll go have an ice cream sandwich. So go to the kitchen, have an ice cream sandwich, track that, put it in. I could have another one, but track that in, go out and get another one. And then you just like almost black out and you just keep going back. So like I would go back and finish the whole box of 12 or whatever it would be, right? And that probably sounds crazy to you now, because you know I'm not like that at all anymore.
Many of you might think that like cheat days could be that, but cheat days for me were just like fun days, and I would just eat to satiety. Like I wouldn't black out, I wouldn't lose control, I would just eat to whatever I wanted. And whatever I wanted ended up being like really high calorie foods. But I never had like this like secretive behavior where I would go into the kitchen by myself and then eat uncontrollably. I've never actually experienced that.
Yeah, this is crazy. Like this, you're like, I literally just remembered this. Like, I don't even know if I should say this, but like, I remember I was in university embarrassing. I literally went into the bathroom to eat so that no one would see me eating. Like, it was that kind of thing. Like, you felt so ashamed to be eating while you were eating, especially because I was eating so clean leading up to it. So like, if I would have, you know, I don't remember, but like a chocolate bar or something like that, I wouldn't want anyone to see me eat, even like a protein bar. Like, I wouldn't want to be seen eating that. So like, I would always try to eat. It would always happen in private. The other thing is that you always feel really remorseful or guilty after. Like, after it's done, you're like, oh, like, okay, I'm gonna try. And then you try to compensate for it after.
Which is more or less where like the binge and purge comes in, because your purging could just be a way of, your version of purging is just completely restricting your food after.
Yeah, pretty much. I've never actually like forced myself to throw up, but like I would definitely try to overcompensate the next day, but always fail. In your case, like, think about it. You never lost control. It was always in the presence of like hundreds of thousands of people. And there was never remorse after. Like, you would never feel guilty or bad about it. So like, yeah, it might have been like an overeating episode, but it wasn't frequent, and there weren't those like psychological associations with it. So like, I just think that that was a different thing altogether.
And it's interesting that many people kind of identify me with like doing cheat days, because a lot of my cheat day videos are quite popular, but I've only done like 6 of them. You know, like, there's people who do one a week. That's 52 a year. I've only ever done 6 over the course of 2 years now, and it wasn't something that I like at every single week, like, was like dying to do. It was just whenever I would do, and I would be like, all right, we're gonna film it. But going back to you,
how did I steal the show?
I'm going off the script right now, because I just really want to hang out here for a minute. How common do you think it is to have your sort of eating behaviors after competing, and like, how do you feel your eating behaviors have changed today? Like, how are they now?
I honestly wouldn't know how frequent it is, because not a lot of people talk about it.
Okay.
So
it's really taboo.
Yeah, it is. And people try not to look at it that way, because it's really glorified as being fit and all this stuff. And so the dark side usually isn't exposed. So it's tough to say. Like, in my experience with clients, they at least binge frequently. I don't know how much of them have a negative psychological association with it, but
undoubtedly all of them, because probably nobody can be shredded and have a binge event and feel okay about it.
Yeah, and then it's very tightly correlated with negative body image too. So like, they tend to go hand in hand, and in my experience, they're really common. As far as my approach in psychology has changed, it's like a 180 from then. Like, that feels like so long ago, and I feel so far removed from that at this point.
I can't even imagine it from you. If you knew the way that Jeff ate, he's like the most normal eater I've ever seen. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, and when you're done, you're done. And you don't even think about it.
Yeah. In part, I deserve some credit, because like, it did take a lot of learning in terms of like how to structure my meals and how to pay attention to my hunger signals and that sort of thing. I got really obsessed with intuitive eating. I still think that's a really good approach. And so it was in some sense learned, but in some sense it was just natural. Like, it was just simply a function of me gaining the weight, and then my appetite was naturally suppressed again.
And something that I find is really helpful for me, I actually can observe the way Jeff eats on a regular basis, and I've observed the way he eats since I've known him. And Jeff has just such great like eating behavior, and I used to envy him. Like, I would envy him all the time when I had my extreme hunger and I would be intermittent fasting. I'd be like, I wish that I could sit down and have a meal and feel full, because I literally did not know what that felt like. Because Jeff would be like, I'm full, and I'd be like, that's wonderful. Like, it felt like he was not like he intentionally rubbing it in, but it like did burn sometimes, because we'd eat the same thing, and like, I would be like, that's a joke for me. Like, I'd be like, I could eat that all over again 3 more times. And it would be kind of frustrating to see somebody be completely satisfied on what we had just eaten together. So I'd always envied what he had, and ever since I decided to go all in, his eating behavior has always been more or less like a goal for me. It's like, okay, one day, or maybe if this like at the end of all of this is how I can eat. In the past, I never thought it was ever going to be achievable for me. Before I did this, I always thought that I was going to have to live with my extreme hunger for the rest of my life. I thought it was like a genetic thing. I thought I was just going to have to deal with it forever. And now I've realized that like, as my appetite has really been a lot more tame these days, I realized like that it was something that I could correct. Doing what Jeff unknowingly was doing post-show was kind of what I needed to do to kind of get to where he is. So hopefully hopefully, I don't know how long it's gonna take, but hopefully I can eat to the point that you are.
I should say, you just sparked my memory then, that like, I don't across the board recommend what I did as a post-show approach. Like, I kind of do go all in myself. That's worked well for me, but like, I wouldn't necessarily say everyone should do it. I think like a middle ground approach that's like actionable and probably more people would be comfortable with, because a lot of competitors just do not want to gain 30 pounds.
Oh, sure. Reverse dieting is is very effective for a lot of people. It just wasn't for me and it wasn't for Jeff. Like, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be effective for you.
Yeah.
Not everyone suffered with what I suffered with, but Jeff could kind of tell that like this would work for her.
I knew, I knew it would. Yeah.
Because I know that you guys hear me say this all the time. Like, I don't recommend anybody to do what I'm doing unless you talk to somebody who's like an expert in this, because they're going to be the ones who are going to let you know that this is the right approach for you. Like, I am by no means a nutrition expert or a coach or anything like that. Even if you told me your life story, I still wouldn't feel comfortable telling you that you should do this.
Yep. What else?
All right. So for most people, I have received a lot of positive reception, but a few of my biggest critics are all men. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've definitely noticed that. It could be something as simple as most men just don't get it. Like, maybe they haven't experienced extreme hunger, so they can't relate. So the only schema that they can plug it into is bulking. So like, it seems like a lot of men, when they look at what you're doing, they think you're bulking because you're trying to gain muscle, and then they're like, that's way too many calories, you're only gonna gain fat, not realizing that it is an exit strategy for you. It's not, you're not trying to progress your physique forward.
This is not physique driven at all.
Exactly, it's the exact opposite of that. So it could just be a misunderstanding. I think that would be like the most charitable way to interpret it. Like, they just are kind of ignorant and haven't really paid attention.
I think they just haven't watched my videos, but then claim to understand what I'm doing just based off of other people's explanation of it, which doesn't do it justice. You have to watch my videos. I explain it really well.
Yeah, and it was frustrating for me because I did one video from you. Obviously, my audience is predominantly male, and like, by far the most frequently commented thing was, why is she bulking on such high calories, when in the video I said she's not doing this to bulk. It's meant to be something to like, anyway, we explained the whole thing in that video, but people skim through videos. I get it. I can see how things are lost in translation. It's fine. There could also be a double standard. Like, it could be the case that some men, I know not all men are like this, because a lot of men have been really supportive of you. It's just that the ones who are critical often are men. It could be some kind of double standard where, like, if I post a squat video and there's a bit of butt wink, no one will bat an eye, at least not in my audience. But if I post a video of you squatting and there's a bit of butt wink, everyone is gonna try to fix it for you. So it could be that thing where some men just wanna, like, they almost wanna help women, but when it's not really welcome in a way.
It's like unsolicited help. They always think that we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's slightly offensive. If you know anything about the way the human brain works, it's not surprising that you don't just eat yourself into obesity forever. I did a whole scientific video on this, but a lot of my critics were like, no, you're just gonna gain weight forever. Some girls did think that, but a lot of guys were like, nope, you're just gonna continue to gain fat forever.
Which is weird, because guys who bulk know that there comes a point where they have to force feed calories and it just becomes excruciating. Like, most guys say bulking is harder than dieting because you have to force feed so much because your appetite is so low.
Yeah.
So like, they should know better. But the other thing I was gonna say that makes me think there might be a double standard, when I went bear mode last year, no one said anything about it. It was all encouragement, right? I gained 30 pounds. You do the same thing and call it all in as a woman, you know, you get some of this criticism. So it makes me think there might be a double standard. Like, who knows? You are kind of like almost like a pioneer in a way in women. So it's like anything that goes outside of what's normal, people will tend to react to more negatively anyway.
Next question. Based on being around me, especially when I eat and I talk about how I feel, do you think going all in actually at this point in time worked for me?
Yeah, like, I think you actually came further in a shorter period of time than I would have expected. I would say it's working. I don't know if it'll ever be like completely done. I mean, it probably will be, but I definitely would be comfortable saying like it has worked, in the sense that your hunger is way lower, you're way less food focused, like you're not going to bed hungry, you're not waking up hungry, like all sorts of like other physiological and psychological parameters have improved. Like, I think it's been a massive success already. But there's like, it's always like a bit of a work in progress, you know, like even for me, like this could be a whole separate video, but like the body image thing, like you're never gonna probably get to a point where you're like, I'm 100% confident in my body, and I look at myself in the mirror and I always love myself. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that may not be realistic for anybody, especially not who has like a fitness background. You know, you're always seeking to improve and just like get better, and I've seen massive improvements in you in like all of those areas. So yeah, definitely I would say that it's worked.
And I would like to make it clear that like I'm by no means like close to being done. I've just gotten to like, I would say the midway point where like my weight has plateaued. I kind of feel like my appetite has finally started to like simmer down. At this point, like I know this is not a quick journey. I just feel like I'm like, at least I feel like I'm going in the right direction. What I mean by saying like, do I think it worked for me? It's like, it is working. It was the right thing for me to do, and it's not done, but at least I'm on the right track. So my last and final question is, what do you think about my weight gain, and how do you feel? Like, do you feel any differently about me because I've gained 35 pounds? That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight.
Yeah, I like you more now.
More?
Yeah.
Even still?
Yeah, I tell you that all the time.
Because in my first month, I only gained 18 pounds.
Right, yeah, it's better now. Like,
but it's even more now. Keep going.
I don't know. I mean, I think you look beautiful then. I think you look beautiful now. Like, obviously it hasn't affected anything. If it has affected anything, it's been for the positive.
Is there a cap?
There's no cap.
There's no cap? No cap.
And like, I just like the fact that like we're able to like, it creates so much freedom for our relationship in terms of like meals out, and like there's never that extra pressure of food selection and like all that stuff. It just makes everything so much easier on us. Not that it was really bad before, and I wouldn't say it ever was. It's just better now.
He liked me before, but he likes me more now. Oh, thank you. You're a good boyfriend. Okay guys, so that is all that I have for Jeff today. Maybe we'll do this again sometime, but I really appreciate you coming on to my channel. My people love you, I know that they do. Tomorrow is Jeff's birthday, so it'd be awesome if you guys would drop a happy birthday for Jeff down below. That would be really sweet. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Please give it a like if you did like it, and subscribe if you happen to be new. I would love it if you stuck around, and I will see you in my next video, which is gonna be my big 4-month update video very, very soon. I love you guys so much. Until next time. Bye. That's a wrap.